I'm going to signal to the man on pit and the wind. So I give him 3.
Yeah.
Now he's going to give me 3 back.
And that's the top Kelly Lemon up there, 3 at the moment. We're both loading out top and bottom.
Let's see now everything is okay, he's all clear on morning, I can let him on.
No pushing, no pushing.
We'll signal out a minute from pit bottom on 1, signal to 3 at the go. And then I'll get 2 from the top. And see what we can do.
Both lights are green, Eve just signal 1, so I signal 2 now to let him down. So when I'm winding the engine, when he knows all clear here now, and he'll let the cage go down.
Start off now, power on, brake off. You know in the 3 seconds, we're half away. And roughly 1 minute and 50 seconds gone by.
The 2 rescue vehicles on display here are more than just exhibits. They're in full working order and ready for action. Together, these safety vehicles serve as one of Britain's emergency mobile winders. Although the gear is housed and maintained at Big Pit, rescue operations in Wales and the southwest of England depend on these machines. It's very unlikely that pit cages will become physically stuck in a shaft and can't be moved using the normal winding gear. But if it happened, the emergency winder would go into action. This is the mobile winder itself. Inside is heavy-duty winding gear driven by a large electric motor. Power for the motor comes from the second vehicle, which is the generator. The mobile winder comes into its own as a separate emergency winding system, working independently if the pit head winding gear has failed. Before the generator cable brings the winder to life, the machinery must be firmly anchored to fixings embedded in concrete. With the power connected and generator running, the work of positioning the steel winding rope begins. It's no surprise to learn that the winding rope is very much stronger than it needs to be to do the job. Belt and braces. And of course, the team wears safety harnesses. The safety of the rescuers is vital in any emergency situation. The end of the winding rope, still being carefully paid out by the emergency winding vehicle 80 feet below, must now be connected to the special rescue cage. They call it the bomb. The bomb is designed to travel down to where the main cages are stuck in the shaft. Here it will free the trapped occupants, bringing them to the surface up to 3 at a time. Those in the emergency winding vehicle are guided by the men at the top of the shaft and wait for their instructions. 2 of the team will travel down the shaft to rescue those in the stuck cages. And their descent begins. The first bit is the hardest. They take their time. This is not a job to be rushed. However, it should only be a matter of minutes before they reach the trap cages, hundreds of feet below. Finally, it's time for the bomb to make the trip back into the light, after a total journey lasting 10 minutes. It reaches daylight once more, and safety. What you've seen here is one of the regular practice drills carried out by Big Pit's own staff. Yes, they're not just pretty faces. When we filmed this practice, the emergency winder had never been needed for a real rescue. But we have to be ready for that 1 in a million chance.
In the early days of mining, there was no pit head bars. The workmen had to go home and bath, which usually was in a tin bath in front of the fire, because most of the people didn't have any bathrooms. So in the late 30s and after, all the collieries then started to have the pit head bars. So you went into the bars to your clean clothes locker, took your clothes off, put them in your clean clothes locker, took your soap and your towel, walked around to the other side of the building to the dirty clothes locker, where there you put your working clothes on, put your towel and your soap in your locker, and then you went down towards the pit. When you came up from the pit, you take your dirty clothes off, take your soap and your towel with you into the showers, have a shower, go into the clean clothes, towards the clean clothes locker, put your clean clothes on and go home. In 1960, there was an explosion in Six Bells Colliery where 44 people lost their lives. 50 years after the explosion, they put a monument remembering the people that got killed, and they called it The Guardian. All collieries were different. Some were deeper than others. Some were very wet, and others were very dusty. In the early days of mining, before mechanization, everything was done manually. It was really real hard work. You probably had to walk 3 or 4 miles to get to your place of work, to work on the coal face. With the advent of machinery, life became a little bit easier to work underground, but it was still hard, awful conditions to work in. Also, up until 1960, a lot of mines still had horses working underground. For example, in Big Pit, there were 2 stables and there were 124 horses between the 2 stables. The horses at one time, they'd be taken underground when they were 3 years old. They would make patterns for their horseshoes. So if they lost a shoe while they were working underground, they could make the shoe on the surface, take the shoe underground, and coal shod the horses underground. That would save bringing the horses up the pit. It was only in the holiday time, for a fortnight, that the horses were taken up the pit, and then they would have their fortnight's holiday, and then after that they'd be taken back down the pit. before Big Pit was a coal mine, it was an ironstone mine. And they mined the ironstone to get the iron ore out of it. They could get about 20% iron ore out of the stone. And that was used in the ironworks in Glenavon. At one time, wood was used for smelting the iron. But then when all the trees were used up, and then they could import iron ore, they went down a bit deeper in Big Pit to get at the coal. And then it was a coal mine. It was called Big Pit because of the size of the shaft. Most shafts are round, but Big Pit is an oval shaped, and it looks, not because Big Pit actually was a big pit, but the shaft looked big, so it was called Big Pit.